See, it was short but sweet, right?
I loved it.
Yeah.
I'm pumped now.
So, is it Steve or Steven?
Steve.
Steve, because you're right. Your real name is Steven, right?
Yeah.
Okay, I just want to hear. Okay, sorry, Steve. You reached out to me because you saw the session I did with Douglas in our European version of Smart Factory a month ago.
Yes.
So, what appealed to you with this format?
Geez, you should have sent me these questions prior to this presentation. I could have prepared some answers for you. No, I just I think that it was great to have to have somebody actually talking, like something that was a modern, upfront take that's in the print industry, because we just don't have that,
Mm-hmm.
So that's that appealed to me more than, I've heard Douglas speak many times, so
he's a good speaker.
It wasn't
by the way.
Douglas's charm that I liked. I've heard that a million times, but it was more that we're doing this. That's what it was about.
I can tell you that yesterday morning when we started the session, Deborah and we spoke a little bit about the fact that when you do things live, it puts actually a little bit more pressure on you, because it's like it's like having a phone call with you. If you screw up, you screw up, right?
Right.
If the technology doesn't work, but it becomes a little bit, because I think I remember, because I have been giving a couple of presentations to the Virtual Print Summit in the UK, and that was pre-recorded, and I was editing everything. I was making sure that I said the right thing, and it was like, why should I watch a film when I can talk to people? And that, we see each other, we can nod, or we can say, oh, fuck him, or whatever.
Yeah,
you can do all that shit, right? Beep. Sorry, I should have the beep sound as well.
It's okay.
Yeah.
This is the print industry, so
yeah.
Okay, that's great. So thank you very much, Devia Software. What are you doing?
We are, we've been in the print industry, helping printers out for 13 years. Both my partner and I are originally from Bound and Company before they were bought out by RD, and we got our start, about 13 years ago, doing a highly customized application for a group insurance company over here that do these very complex enrollment materials. And believe it or not, 13 years later, that application is still being used, still being maintained, and still putting ink on paper to the tune of 4 or 5 million impressions a year during the hitting mostly during this heavy season. But the past 7 years, we've moved a little bit more but added to our custom development side of the house, and started to first getting involved with PageFlex and their PageFlex clients.
In the good old times, right?
In the good old days. And when the money was flowing for PageFlex and
now you have to
conferences.
sell 10 or 15 per PageFlex, right?
Yeah. So
it used to be the only booth at a trade show. I was like, what is this?
Right. Now they're not even there. They're not even there.
No, it's crazy.
So yeah, and then then we really started honing in on doing everything we can for a client. So that includes, before we sort of pitched ourselves as a consulting company and stuff, and now our consulting meaning we'll come in, we'll help you push through something that you have to do for a project. We still do that, but now we try to do a little bit more where we're more of like an agency type of model, where we're there to help clients month over month. And we've gotten heavily into digital marketing, which I'm going to touch on in this presentation. That's an area that I think is a weakness right now for clients. Having any sort of connection to that is really a problem right now. and I think people just don't understand it. So I'm hoping that even though we only got a handful of people on here, attendees on here,
don't worry, the
afterwards
replays will be different.
Yeah, well,
Replays.
replays will be hopefully. What I can promise is that you will take away something from here. I'm not really, it'd be great if you gave me a call, but I'm not selling you on anything. I'm giving you information that you can use, or at least start to formulate how you might go about making purchases.
So
great.
Morton actually did a session this morning about I don't know if you were on it.
I did. I wasn't on it, but I wanted to be on it. If I hadn't.
Luckily,
you can take the replays if you like.
See? But
I should have done that. Go ahead.
But the important thing is that we actually briefly touched upon something that you just said about digital marketing as well. I'm kind of the LinkedIn profile stalker, so I go to everybody's LinkedIn profile, gather some information, and see what, especially as a print customer, what stands out for me.
Right.
And you have this one sentence on your profile, which is that don't settle, which I love, but settle for just a storefront for printed materials when you can have a distributed marketing platform. Bravo, sir.
Thank you.
Bravo.
Thank you.
Because honestly, already I'm interested. What is a distributed marketing platform? How can I put more things in that? So I'm really glad that you're going to touch upon all of that stuff. And I'm just going to go into the background so that you guys can do what you do. But I'm going to place Steve's LinkedIn profile into the chat so everyone can connect with him. And thank you so much for sharing your information with everybody.
No problem. Appreciate it.
Before we go into your session, I'm still a little bit more curious, Steve. Would you say that in your company, Douglas and Infigo Software is just a component in what you do?
Yes. Yes. So we support. We have a very strong. I disclosed this a couple times in my presentation because I want to be clear, just like NBC has to tell you that they're related to Disney or vice versa. We do have a very strong relationship with Infigo. We are their U.S. support team, and we are their preferred solutions provider in the United States. However, that relationship's the past 3 years, and we continue to do interface with Open Text Dialogue, for instance.
Okay, so you have a diverse offering.
Yes. So we do really manage to change the way we sell ourselves and the way we sell our services, as opposed to project, which we still do. I'm talking about this whole idea of having it month to month and having us be involved for you, more of an agency model where we're there to do some of the work, but more importantly, have discussions like you and I are having. Being able to bring in somebody who has a bunch of experience in X or Y, that is where we really separate ourselves, and even separate ourselves. And I've said this directly to Douglas and Greg and Infigo. We also are separating ourselves from the vendor themselves, because we will give, if we think that what you're trying to do in Infigo, there's a better way of doing it, we're not afraid to suggest that. We're not tied to that.
No, but that makes sense. And as you said, if you take the agency role and the creative side to it as well, I think that makes a lot of sense that you have the courtesy on behalf of your customer to choose the software solution that makes the job right. I think that is sometimes when you look at companies that are too tied into each other, you have difficulty saying no to a client, even though you know that there are better solutions in the market, right? So Well, I think that you should take it away now, and then I will listening in, and then we can continue our chat when you're finished. So I will turn off camera and sound, but I will be there all the time. So if you need anything, you just say Morten, and I will be there.
Okay, sounds good.
Hi, everybody. Okay.
No, I'm good. I'm good. Yep.
Great.
Hi, everybody. So I'm going to. There was a presentation uploaded, but I would suggest that's a little bit. I have a tendency to make some changes at the end. I did make some improvements, so I'm going to share my screen and present that way. So if you give me, bear with me for a second, I'm going to get all that turned on for you. Okay. Okay, I believe you can see that.
That looks cool.
All right, great. So we did some introductions there, and also if you're watching my webcam, I apologize. I have a presenter screen on the left-hand side and what you're seeing on the right-hand side, and I have a tendency to want to turn my head and for some reason look at the same screen I'm looking at on my left. So if you see me flicking my head back and forth, that's the only reason why. It's not because I'm being attacked or anything like that. So so what I want to discuss today is you know, there's just a lot of talk in here with this is smart factory and industry 4.0, and you know, there's a lot that has to be done and a lot that needs to be improved behind let's call industry 4.0, all the things behind the MIS system when it comes to web to print. But I want to talk about in this this presentation, I want to talk about what is in front of that web to print, what from the web to print software itself is in, you know, from that outward into the public ecosystem of things available. So let's get started. Did go over this a little bit already. Couple things to highlight here. I'm really passionate about human-centered interfaces. My entire career has been all about, you know, even though I've run a business, I'm still very fussy about exactly what an interface looks like, and exactly not just if it looks nice and it looks sexy, but I want it to function without annoying a user, a human. So I'm very, very passionate about that. And but I'm also very passionate about interconnecting systems, and that's what we're going to focus on today, is trying to interconnect systems. How do we interconnect what we do in our factories to our customers? And like anybody else, I only know what I know. So I'm going to say things in this presentation, and I have experiences in certain applications, but I hope that you can take what I tell you about these applications and apply them. If you don't know these other applications, you can apply that to your own situation. I think you will be able to. So that was the first thing. The second thing is what is this web to print that we speak of? So I sort of stated it, and I honestly think that there's a pretty loosey-goosey non-definition about this out here, and I think web to print is everything from the shell of the factory, which I'm going to call, for sake of being not abstract, the MIS system, the thing that connects your ordering and your inventory and stuff to the user. That's where web to print, in my eyes, begins. Okay. In general, web to print in our way of thinking is just the e-commerce system. But I think it's more than that. I think it has to be more than that. And I will talk about this idea of robots. So that's what the term I pick for APIs. So I don't always sound like a geek, as if talking about robots makes me sound any less like a geek. But robots, things that can interconnect without human interaction, I think they also need to be part of what web to print means. And finally, and we touched on this prior, what is digital? What is this distributed marketing or brand management platform and all these other terminology we see kicked around? I want to make a really big point here, okay? Web to print is an insider's term. Nobody outside of the printing industry talks about web to print. If you say web to print to somebody, your clients or your clients' clients, they're probably not going to know what they're talking about. They might be typing it in somewhere. Web to print, that name, that moniker is something that is important to us, though, because it helps us understand what we're talking about. We're talking about web to print, meaning what we just talked about in the previous slide. E-commerce systems and APIs, things that connect the outside world to our factory. Okay, but you shouldn't yourself brand your solutions as web to print. You would see companies like PageFlex and Marcom Central, they have moved away from web to print. Why? Because I think in PageFlex's case, they've sold all the printers they're ever going to sell to, so they had to change it up. Marcom Central, ditto, like they need a new market, but beware, they are going after your clients now. They're going after the brands. So you're somewhat in competition with them in a certain respect. So don't think of what PageFlex and Marcom Central have done and apply that to your marketing and branding. Okay. That's my little soapbox. And that's not even what this presentation is even about. But definitely take that away if you're in a business position, in any sort of marketing sales position. You have to be thinking about that previous slide. So what are we actually going to talk about today? We're going to try to tackle the area between the edge of the factory stuff, the MIS, all the way out into the consumer's browser, the consumer's phone, all those things. I'm not going to get into the specifics of those things, but I'm going to talk about how we think about getting to that point. And as you can see on this slide, that marketing stack, we need to get ourselves, our systems connected into that public marketing stack. Why? Because that marketing stack is huge. Okay? This is one of my favorite. I just love looking at it because it's such an abomination of logos and whatnot. But this is the MarkTech 5000. It's a pretty famous, in my little world, pretty famous little graphic. And I don't know if you see this what here. This is a print. That's the little print box right there, which I think is unfair because we should all be in there. All of our printers should be in there, not just these. These are like mostly the big companies, and to be honest with you, the both of the vendors that we talk about here today aren't even in this box, and they're also not in the e-commerce box. I don't think. I didn't look too heavily. So, but these are all the brands and different things that are out there to go after all these different marketing and sales and data and social relationships, and we're a part of this. We're a part of this. We are absolutely a part of this. And if you're not a part of it, if you don't make your clients a part of this, or you're not aware of it when your clients come to you, it's going to be a problem. So we can't look at all these things. So let's bite off a couple smaller chunks. We got the print thing. I think we got that mastered if you're on this call. we have marketing automation, the CRM, the e-commerce marketing and platforms, and good old analytics. So I want to focus on the e-commerce platforms, the analytics, and the CRM. And if there's time at the end, I want to talk, like, sort of wing it, maybe get Morten back on the phone and talk about robots and, you know, what is beyond what we're talking about today.
Let's do that.
No.
Okay.
No. At the
Not
end.
now, not now.
Okay. Yeah, let's do that. All right.
I'm just listening in. So.
Okay. I'm glad to see you're there. I thought you'd be napping by this point.
No.
Okay. So, all right, the e-commerce platforms, it's a good place to start, right? Because this is the one that sits there. This is the one that people are most familiar with. You know, when you are on Amazon, I hate to bring it up, but, you know, when you're on Amazon, you know, you're interfacing with a very complex and very data-driven interface into Amazon's, you know, logistics properties that house all this stuff. And in addition, you're interfacing with all the people that interface with Amazon and sell things directly through and ship directly from. Thankfully, we don't have to do that, or we need to pull Jeff Bezos in here and have him come up with how we get a data center together to house all that stuff. So for us, I'm going to take a look at two types of e-commerce systems. The e-commerce systems that's connected to the factory, which are the
Steve, can you refresh your browser? Because I thought we lost your audio. Just refresh your browser, please. Are you there?
Yep.
Okay. Sorry, it was just audio just for some reason disappeared. So if you can get started from where you are, that would be perfect.
Yes.
Sorry about that.
No problem. Oh, hang on a second. Hang on, guys. Okay.
I need to get to know you better, Steve, because I want to learn more about what you're talking about. It's really cool.
There we go. Let's jump ahead. We've been through that. And there we are. So what I was saying was that I selected the two.
You have to share the screen again. Sorry.
Oh.
Yeah.
I got this. How's that?
So cool.
All right, great. So, so I think you see what we're talking about here. We're going to go after and we're going to look at the e-commerce systems that I know of that are already web to print and connected to the factory in one way, shape, or form. And then we're going to look. First, we're going to look at the traditional e-commerce systems and say, well, why would I or wouldn't I use them instead? And what would I have to do? So we're not going to I put Shopify here because I do run across clients that ask about Shopify, but Shopify is quite limited when it comes to this. So I'm going to pick Woo and Magento, and we're just going to talk about them briefly and say, well, you know, why not, you know, why wouldn't I use one of those? So Magento, there's, you know, what are the reasons why we would, let me just back up here. You know, why wouldn't we start with a generic a generic e-commerce system, instead of choosing a purpose-built e-commerce for web to print? Well, there's a number of reasons, and if we look at the Magento slide, as we look at these regular e-commerce systems, you'll see that things like hosting options and connections to the marketing stack are much higher, right? But the talent pool is not as large as Woo, but it's certainly larger than any of the talent. So talent pool meaning, can you find a person that's familiar with the system? Can you find somebody that customizes it? Can you find somebody that maintenance it? So the talent pool in Magento is higher than any of the web to print talent pools, but it's not as high as, say, WooCommerce is, because WooCommerce, as you see, is based inside of WordPress. So hosting options, you have pretty good hosting options there. Magento is a open source application, as well as a high-end Adobe hosted application. Self-service, this sort of goes hand in hand with the talent pool. Is it self-serviceable? Is there an interface for me to make modifications to the catalog? Magento's okay with that, but Magento's pretty complex application. And then we get into the areas. I'm going to actually skip these two and go down to here. The integrated with the marketing stack. So that was that big picture I showed earlier. That marketing stack, most of the e-commerce systems, the generic e-commerce systems that are out there today, have a lot more native integrations with the marketing stack. The web to print softwares, not as much, but that's why we're here today. The APIs for Magento are fantastic, but now we get into the weak area of these generic e-commerce systems. And for Magento's, I separated out here document rendering and online designer. So document rendering is something that, okay, let's say you're collecting some data in a form and you need to generate a document or a set of documents, as opposed to, or in addition to, an online designer, which is more like a what you see is what you get. So document rendering, in my eyes, would be something like PageFlex Server or OpenText, Dialog. Online designer would be something like MegaEdit from Infigo or Chili Publish. So I gave these 2 stars here because Magento does give you ways of doing this. And Infigo in particular has some strong native connections to Magento to allow it to interoperate with Magento and utilize some of their, utilize Magento for one area and utilize Infigo software for the connections to the factory and the designer. So I left them as 2 stars. The factory native and factory API. So what am I talking about here? I'm talking about when you place an order, how does your order get from the cart and the order onto the floor? And obviously, this is going to be an area of weakness for these, because that's one of the things the purpose-built web to print systems, address. So factory native, it's basically 0. Factory API for Magento, I give it high remarks. Magento has a lot of APIs available to a person. So if you had some smart people there, maybe you could find a partner or a consulting company that could write connections to you. And the chances are that in Magento, you might have a chance of actually finding someone that offers a connection that's already built. So these are notes for you. I'm going to skip over them. Please feel free to read these. I will update the PDF at the end of the conference here. So then we get over to WooCommerce, and let me just highlight the differences between Woo and Magento, okay? Woo still definitely has a strong integration with the marketing stack. The reason it does is because WooCommerce, if you don't know, is a plugin to WordPress. So WooCommerce, I have some mixed feelings about it. I've seen it successfully done, but you have to be careful because WooCommerce can be very easy right out of the box. So that's one of the big differences between Magento and WooCommerce. But as it pertains to our discussions today, it does address the integration with the marketing stack. Its API in both areas, maybe a WordPress person might disagree with me, but as far as API, actual something that says, here is our published API, this is exactly how it works, and it's mature, I think there's a lot to be left to desired as opposed to Magento, which is much further along. And you get high marks down here in the cost, talent pool, and self-service areas for obvious reasons. It's not expensive. There's tons of hosting options between having somebody host it for you and you hosting it yourself. It's highly self-serviceable. The talent pool is going to be high because it's PHP and WordPress. But again, I do want to warn you before I move over to the red areas here, I do want to warn you that if it's a very big catalog, you want to stay away from WooCommerce unless you have real expertise in performance with WordPress, because I've seen a lot of poor implementations because WordPress has a lot of stuff going on in the background. Let's put it that way. Not getting in too complex here. So just like Magento, it fails in document rendering, online designers, factory native, and factory API. It's just not as good as Magento is, or there's not as many, should I say, there's not as many options available to you out of the box like there is for Magento. These are some notes for you to read. So as I sort of, focused in on generic e-commerce systems have their weaknesses. I showed you they have a lot of good things about them, but they also have their weaknesses. And those weaknesses are obvious, right? They're document rendering, the online designers, and the integration with the factory floor. So are there options? Can we get around this? And let me tell you, before I say this, these options were actually thought about when I signed out the ratings that I have. So if you go back and look, you'll notice that Magento maybe scores a little bit higher with Online Designer. That's because I know that there are options I've seen work. So you can overcome these weaknesses and still stick with a generic MIS system. What you have to address is you have to integrate with a renderer. So again, this is if you're generating lots of PDFs, or you don't need an online designer tool, you can go the route of anything from PageFlex Server by itself to Open Text Dialog on the very high end, to utilizing some PDF components that are out there in the world if it's just a matter of mail merging stuff together. There's also some open text PDF stuff that's out there as well. So if you're just taking some stuff, but we're printers, so I think you want something that can handle separations and, not destroy the fidelity of the PDF. So you want to be thinking about something that you integrate with that's something like PageFlex Server or Dialog. You can embed a custom design. You can embed a design tool to overcome the lack of design tools in these systems. I've already mentioned that Devia Software's MegaEdit can be integrated pretty much out of the box with Magento. I know I've not participated in an implementation, but I know that Chili Publish can also be done out of the box. Not out of the box, but there's people that have done it. Integrate with a modern MIS. That's another piece you're going to have to address. In this area here, you're more or less left, in my eyes, unless you find a system that does operate with Magento or WooPress, you're left pretty much writing this on your own. Again, with the Infigo bit, you can integrate Magento with Infigo and actually push the orders from Magento through the Infigo MIS system and thereby pick up those connections that you need for the factory floor. And then at the end of the day, you're left with some custom integration that has to be done. So these are the things that you have to think about when you go down that road. Now, you could have a huge catalog of static items or fulfillment items, and you need to stand it up more quickly. And the fulfillment aspect maybe isn't that complex, or you don't have to track a bunch of inventory. In that case, standing up a WooCommerce site, I can tell you, will take a lot less time to do. But again, we're talking about Factory 4.0 here. And if we're talking about Factory 4.0, we don't really want our generic e-commerce systems to be completely disconnected. So there's some notes for you, a lot of notes there. So the web to print e-commerce. Let's go in and look at these two. I'm actually going to skip through this because this is really the sort of the reverse of what I talked about with, and I'm just going to highlight the differences between our understanding of the differences between PageFlex and Infigo. So with Infigo and Catfish and MegaEdit, Catfish is their storefront, MegaEdit is their online tool. They come together as a package. So the big areas of difference is the online designer here. Infigo gets 5 stars for this. Their document rendering isn't quite as good, in my opinion, as PageFlex because the PageFlex is offline document rendering for huge batches. Is amazing. So and fast. But for online stuff, Infigo is higher up the chain here. The other area is the factory native and factory API. PageFlex has stopped really putting too much effort into this area, and Infigo is certainly an area of major strength is its connection of products to your MIS systems. And in particular, and I believe I have a client on this call right now that we've done some stuff for, in particularly what they call generic MIS systems, which allows you to do other things with order data, which is very important for the Factory 4.0 and very important for this presentation because we're talking about integrating outward into the public cloud. Some notes for you. And we already talked about this. So at the end of the day, we have to pick one or the other. You have some problems in both cases, okay? And the weaknesses in the web to print e-commerce systems, pretty much these three. Talent pool isn't as high. It's just not going to be as high because they're specialized systems. Integration with the marketing stack, while Infigo is certainly much, much better than PageFlex, it's not as good as, say, a Magento or a WooCommerce. And then the API, again, Infigo and PageFlex are pretty good on the API side, but neither of them are as good as Magento would be out of the box. So how do we get around this? So this is my shameless plug here. I was laughing when I made this. So how you get around this is, for the staffing, you get yourself a good partner like Devia. And for the rest of the items, a CRM and analytics are two things that I really think really need to be thought of in all systems going forward to connect what you're doing into that big cloud of stuff that I showed many slides ago. And, analytics, that has to be there as well. But everybody sort of knows in analytics. I don't know that everybody understands this, because, to be honest with you, you got to be a rocket science sometimes to figure out analytics. But I'm going to show you, or at least talk to you about, how a CRM can do a lot what the analytics is doing in a much more human way. So why do we need a CRM? So this is the slide I actually left some of my notes directly on the page. But in the B2B world, which a lot of you, I'm sure, deal in the B2B world, I would say 80% or more what we deal with our clients is B2B. In the B2B world, it's hard to say, well, what's, CRM? Like, we already know who the people are going to log into the system are. But it's not really about that. It's really about letting the CRM connect you up to all these other pieces out there, and to provide you some of the things that are missing in your web to print systems. They're also missing in the generic e-commerce systems. It's not just the web to print e-commerce systems that are missing these things. That's why CRMs are popular. CRMs will give you things like reports on orders, reports on activity, reports on, is this, the combination of orders and activity. It gives you access to the ecosystem. Okay, so its own set of add-ins, its own set of expertise. It may, depending on which one you select, give you the ability to add chat to your system, out of the box. It gives you ways of blasting email marketing out to your users or to your customers' users. It also allows some transparency for your customers to get into a CRM, where a lot of times e-commerce systems, not just web to print, but all e-commerce systems, sometimes have a lot of restrictions when it comes to viewing the behind the scenes type stuff. Who ordered what? Was so-and-so logged in yesterday? That's not typically something that is exposed to the end user. And that end user happens to be more or less an admin on your client side. So if you have a client administrator, I get this all the time, geez, I just want to see if so-and-so, made into the system. And they can't, because they don't have the access, and you can't give them the access to see that information. So what do? They end up calling you and bothering you about it. So I'm not saying CRM's a panacea for all that, but it definitely helps. So these are notes for you, but I'm gonna read through them, because we got a few more minutes before we can go and talk about this. But our experience over the last year plus has been dropping HubSpot, the free edition, into any system where our client will allow us to do it. And I talked about it on the previous page. there are so many things that just dropping that little, it's just as easy, if not easier, than dropping an analytics code into your system. You drop in this little piece of code, and suddenly it's tracking user logins, it's tracking order data, it's tracking activity, and then it's giving you options depending on how you have it configured to act on those events. So again, that's a big piece here, that this is one way that you can, one inexpensive way without inviting in a lot of expense to integrate in some connection to that outside world. Yep.
Steve, are you aware of the time?
Yes, I am.
Ah, that's good. Okay, I won't.
So I am right at the end where I was going to open it up to you, and this is actually that robots discussion I was talking about, and that maybe we can have a back and forth about.
Oh yeah.
And some contact information about us, and that's it.
Turn on your camera and turn off the presentation, and then let's talk.
Mm-hmm.
Hmm?
Okay, hang on.
To be honest, I think that you promised to have some good takeaways, and I think it's been quite amazing, to be honest, because when everybody talks about if I'm going to joke a little bit, you can say that a lot of people attending a show like this as presenters, they want to talk about the products and their services, right? Mm-hmm. But you also talk about the pit holes and some of the things that you should avoid, and you also talk about the I wouldn't say competitors, but you take the choices that people could think they would take, and then you discuss that it's maybe not a bad path, but you just have to take these considerations. I think that is a beautiful way of presenting yourself as a very serious company. Mm-hmm. So congratulations on that.
Thank you. Thank you.
The robots.
Yeah, the robots.
I take that we're not talking about like the industrial robots. I take we're talking about software robots.
Yeah, software robots. So, I wanted to leave it sort of loose at the end there, but we flew through a bunch of stuff. But at the end of the day, right, what we're talking about is we're just trying to make that glue between what goes on the factory floor, give some transparency, but not too much, and we want to modify it before we show it to the user. But the best way that we can interface with the user is as unintrusively as possible. So in a B2B scenario, in the B2C scenario, it gets very sneaky. Like it gets like, hey, we're going to find out what location this person is and their favorite color, and we're going to offer them this, that, and the other thing, and we're going to traipse them down with remarketing. And those things are all there, and that they are possible. We're involved in a remarketing piece right now where, somebody purchases something on a B2C site that's web to print. We're gathering lists in our CRM and the pieces that they purchased, and going out and retargeting those users in social media ads and things of that nature. So that's one way. I call that a robot. A robot's doing, okay, I set it up, but the robot is doing the work for me. They are going after audiences, and audiences like the lookalike audiences that are like the ones that I've given back to the social media scary engines. Okay, so that I consider that a robot. It's a robot. No matter how you put it, right? It's doing work for you, and you're sitting there, right?
I can't help thinking about. Are you familiar? I know that's you're from the US, but are you familiar with a guy? His name is Brent Sibber.
No.
Okay, he is maybe the most knowledgeable and superior person in the European web to print industry, and he's having yearly conferences and very, very skilled. But one of the things that he had on his last online print symposium that was in Munich just before the pandemic in Europe in March. He spoke about, will there, maybe that was another session, but that was in that guy anyway. But he was talking about whether you can imagine that you have web to print solutions that you do speech recognition and have all these kind of things, which is also related to the topics of robots, of course, right?
Correct.
And I couldn't help think about that when you talk about it. Obviously, you talk about it in relation to customer service. You relate in relation to upselling, in relation to how you present. It's a marketing robot as well. There's a lot of ways of identifying how a robot can assist you, right?
Yes, and with the B2C, it's there's so much out there in the B2C realm, but in the B2B as well. In the B2B, the robots are more potentially customized, right? Because they may have a closed system, or they could be using Salesforce, or they could be using HubSpot, and they want this stuff coming from there. They want their orders coming from Salesforce directly to you. They don't want them to have to leave here to order a set of documents to send ahead to a client for a meeting. If we ever get back to in-person meetings again, maybe we send them a mask as well with the package. But yeah, I mean, I think you have that. You have on the B2B side, you have things like their back-end systems need to communicate, or an event is happening on somebody's website, and that event triggers a mailing piece. Isn't that web to print? I think it is. It's web to print. Like, we don't want that going through some other channel.
That is exactly because in my the session that I did before this one, and you didn't hear that, of course, it was like talking about all the web to print solutions that are not like the WWWs, but are more like robots, apps, APIs, all the things that can be triggered by behavior, for example, right? And I was just thinking that it's an amazing topic to talk about. When you bring it on to this session, is that something that you believe will be a demand from your customers in the future, or you see it as a demand already?
Yeah, it already is a demand. I mean, I think because I think I may have a slightly distorted view, because we had tended to be a company, and we still are, but we had tended to be a company that it was like, we're on our last leg here. We need experts to come in and figure this out. So I have a tendency to see a lot of the, oh God, we didn't think it was going to be this difficult. We need to integrate with this. We already promised it. Joe, the sales guy, he already sold it. The contract signed.
Oh yes.
We got to get somebody in here to do this. And
you know the worst case scenario, that is when robot starts to oversell.
Well, I'm going to program the robots to not say yes on the first contract deal. But yeah, and things like it's simple things. Even I think I'm going to consider robot SSO. SSO, single sign-ons, become much more approachable now. I mean, single sign-on, 6-7 years ago was horrendous. Now it is something. But those are the things that, like I said, I try to keep an open mind. But those are the areas that something like PageFlex and some of the older, some of the storefronts that haven't been kept up to date are really falling behind. Where, like in Figo, Catfish, they're very advanced on the SSO front, as well as the generic e-commerce systems, because they have to be, right? But it's very important. You know what I mean?
Of course I understand. But that was like, that I can't help thinking about that when you talk about, for example, the SSOs, that all technology often matures. So when you saw Twitter bringing Bootstrap to the market, everybody was using Bootstrap because it has an advantage, right? When you talk about standardized authentication, it becomes like something that makes sense. And I think that a lot of the developments is like iterations that brings it to the next step, because you don't have to dig into the every layer of software. You get the more.
Yeah, like Bootstrap was like, if nobody knows this, Bootstrap is like, hey, you know, I have to develop a site that's responsive. Yeah. And you had to go and you had to find somebody who even understood what that word was.
First you had, that was exactly my words.
Right?
Yeah.
So it's like but that's those game-changing type things. And I think web to print, and I think we're thankful that we have some smart people, working on this, smart, young, vibrant teams that are pushing the boundaries of this, and a whole group of new innovators coming up that are able to tap into these things and then push the boundaries of other companies. Specifically in this robot area, I mean, this is the thing, and this is why at the end of the conversation, talking about HubSpot, you have to have some sort of place to get yourself dug into, to put your data into, so that you can springboard out into all these other things that are available to everybody but us, so to speak. I mean, everybody that doesn't have a unique e-commerce system.
That is the democratization of technology, right? I mean, we spoke about democratization of pricing and how you produce things, but I think that I mean, you can just look at some of the resource web pages on the net, and you just get overwhelmed with the amount of APIs and SDKs and JavaScripts and all things that you need in order to make things work. So. Well, Steve,
yes.
I have to say thank you. It was really a pleasure to meet you, and I think it was really elevating the discussion. I will get back to you because I need more from you, but I will get back, not here, but I will get back to you.
Next time we do it a little bit. We give ourselves. I'll give you more room next time. I won't go on vacation just before this.
I plan it 6 months ahead instead of 2 months, 2 weeks.
We'll reprise this conference.
Definitely.
Okay.
Thank you very much, Stephen. Talk to you later.
Thank you. Thanks, guys.
Okay.
Bye.
Yeah. Bye.